Jasmine, how far would you be willing to travel for a food experience?
It depends on how far and, more importantly, what food I want.
Well, according to NBC, 21% of travelers have booked a trip just to try a specific kind of food, while 67% of travelers say that the local cuisine and dining options of their destination heavily influences their decision to travel in the first place.
Food has become an important sector of the tourism industry and an economic draw in large cities. Large metropolitan areas like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Atlanta have hundreds of social media pages dedicated to things like new Michelin-starred restaurants, hole-in-the-wall ramen bars, the best $5 pizza slices, and overall food culture. Aside from great food, what these restaurants have in common is the bustling social scenes surrounding what they serve. These social scenes and the cities in which they reside in were key focuses of research that Neha and I participated in order to better understand this food culture. The popularity of these restaurants can also be attributed to the community-centered nature of the urban environments in which they reside. I bet if you walked up to a community-centered place like New York and you asked a New Yorker about their favorite bagel place, they'd probably respond with a couple of cult favorites. Neha and I are not native New Yorkers. However, we are aware of the Charlotte food scene. Neha, do you have any places you love to eat here in Charlotte? Maybe somewhere you'd like to take your friends?
There's this ramen bar I've been going to for about 3 years now. I always go with my friends, I make a day of it, and some of my favorite memories are from there. What my ramen bar experience, the NBC statistic from earlier, and city trends tell us is that food is not just an important part of our physical health or cultural backgrounds, it's increasingly an important part of our economy and social connectivity. As the profitability of food increases, companies have sought to use social marketing tools such as third spaces, which are low entry fee spaces that focus on community and socialization to entice customers. This is driven by a growing shift towards experience-based spending rather than just commoditized goods or services. And this shift is largely known as the experience economy, wherein more economic value is placed on the creation of memorable moments rather than just commoditized goods and services. And recently, more and more research has been conducted on how food can create these memorable moments.
One unique and growing aspect of the food industry that we were particularly interested in is that of the food hall industry. Whether you've been in hundreds of food halls or you have no idea what they are, I promise you're bound to stumble upon them, as their numbers have grown from the 223 reported in 2020 to the over 360 locations located all over the United States in 2025, according to our research.
So now, I feel like people might be wondering, what is this mystical food hall? Food halls evolved from market halls, which in turn evolved from open-air markets. Market halls and open-air markets served as cultural hubs for vendors of all different products, from produce to even livestock and goods and services. Soon, consumers in these large metropolitan areas needed more hygienic, safe, and reliable ways to get their goods and services and produce. So companies and private businesses and governments began to invest in covered market halls rather than open-air markets. And as the decades passed, market halls continued to evolve to meet changing consumer needs. While they still served as cultural and community hubs, consumers increasingly relied on hypermarkets and supermarkets as industrialization and urbanization continued. And as private and public tastes also shifted towards experiences instead of just goods and services, market halls began to be split up into 3 things: your hypermarket, your supermarket, and your food hall. In the modern era, food halls also serve as cultural and social hubs, with the main goal and purpose of a food hall being the dining experience itself under one roof, with things like retail or entertainment being a potential secondary addition.
Oh, so like a mall food court.
Okay, not exactly. While food courts offer a variety of dining experiences under one roof, their goal is to supplement the mall shopping experience, and so they don't meet the scholarly literature's definition of a food hall. In comparison, the main goal of a food hall is the dining experience itself, with things like entertainment and fun retail options just being a potential secondary addition.
Okay, I get it. So the difference between something like a food court and a food hall is the fact that in food halls, all the restaurants are under one roof, and their main economic draw is the food itself.
Exactly. Additionally, just like those historic market halls I was talking about, food halls also serve as hubs and incubators for small and local businesses. In fact, out of the 360 food halls that we databased, we found that 78.1% of them house small and local businesses. And these small and local businesses create a feeling of community and togetherness that is often not seen in solo food practices. They also have interdependencies, like the price each vendor charges, if a vendor uses local produce or not, and the collective generation of foot traffic that influences the food hall and each small and local business in a way that solo food businesses just don't see. This means, and these interdependencies mean, that food halls are based on the foundation of shared economic and social growth.
Aside from the diverse local and ethnic foods you can get at these food halls, another economic draw of them is the building itself. In order to cater to the experience economy, which we talked about as the social and experiential aspect of the economy that is booming currently, food halls employ something called adaptive reuse. Adaptive reuse is a sustainable architectural practice in which older buildings are modified and renovated in order to meet a modern need. These food halls aim to synergize elements of their modern design with key historical elements of the building in order to capitalize on the experiential novelty of eating in a heritage space. One example of a food hall that does this is there's one that's located in a bank that Bonnie and Clyde robbed, and more locally here in Charlotte, we have Optimus Hall that used to be a textile mill. Zooming in on Optimus Hall, you can see that they've included key historical elements such as the exposed brick, high ceilings, and they've even still included the smokestack that used to service the steam boilers, which now serves a mainly aesthetic focal point. These food halls also tend to sit in economically vacant areas, and so it creates different economic productivity in that area as they grow.
Okay, I feel like the history and variety offered in these food halls are gonna make my picky eater friends really happy.
I think it will. Imagine, you're walking with us into Optimus Hall. You're immediately hit with the smell of delicious aromatic Indian food. There's Italian creamy pasta. You take a right and there's handmade sushi and brick-fired oven pizza. Your friends are pulling you in all these different directions because there's so many opportunities and foods to try. And Neha, they even have a ramen place.
Okay, you have to stop. I'm getting so hungry now. And I feel like these food halls kind of have endless options.
They can. Food halls actually come in many shapes and sizes, with some such as Pike Place Market in Seattle having over 470 vendors, while others such as Ivywild in Colorado have only 10. Regardless of their size difference, this industry's rapid 5-year growth speaks to business owners' need for cheap property they can scale up in order to launch their businesses. With property prices getting higher and higher in large cities, food hall owners look to adaptive reuse for its cost effectiveness, but they stayed for its experiential draw and its sustainability. These food halls also tend to sit in manufacturing plants and factories that used to be in these economically blooming places that are now low income. And so as these investors come to these low-income places and they work with these small businesses to make the economy greater, they can lift the economy up with them, turning what was once a small town into a new urban art hub.
Okay, so what I'm getting is food halls are the only and the perfect urban regeneration tool, and city planners should just put them everywhere.
Sort of. Before we get ahead of ourselves, it is important to note that when urban regeneration and adaptive reuse are done in a way that does not integrate the community into their decision-making, it can turn into the gentrification of a neighborhood. To explain gentrification, it is this process in which newer developments come to a normally low-income area, and they bring in these young, affluent people while also displacing older people who tend to be poor and people of color. What struck us as unique about these food halls is their community integration in their business design. One example of a food hall in Arizona that does this is the Churchill Food Hall, and they aim to have all their vendors participate in the community through something called their social rent, in which once a month you are required to do some service in the area. They also make it a point to hire local talent, as high rates of unemployment in these areas can be a facet of gentrification and pushing people out.
So essentially, these businesses and food halls that are working together with local businesses are bringing up the whole area. And this interconnectedness and these interdependencies are extremely important when you consider the longevity of food as a business. According to Yale's Economic Inclusive Development Lab in 2019, the average tenure of a food-based business in the United States is only about 1 year. Comparatively, food halls like the Mercado La Paloma in South Central California have average tenures of 16 years and counting. This is because food halls create community and social gatherings that uplift everyone in a community through these interdependencies and foundations of shared economic growth and values.
As Neha was saying, the longevity of these businesses is because of their concentric nature. They make sure to include the community in everything they do, with some even hosting music and theater performances on the weekends for locals and tourists alike to enjoy.
We first went into studying food halls for what they could teach us about economics and business. We wanted to understand how so many could have been created in such a short amount of time. As we databased and did research, we found certain practices that are unique to the food hall industry, such as adaptive reuse, urban regeneration, and community-centered business practices. We also learned that what makes food halls unique are not just the ingredients to any healthy lifestyle that we have, like proteins or carbs, even if those are important. What makes food halls unique and so profitable are things like joy and connectivity. Food halls are unique and a bustling part of the economy because they bring people together, consumers and locals alike. We've learned that places for connectivity, joy, history, and culture are just as important as hardware stores or parking lots. We went into researching food halls for what it could teach us about the economy and business, but we came out with a new appreciation for the things that bring us together. Maybe now you all can be part of that 21% of people who travel just for a novel food experience like a food hall. Maybe now you can go to a food hall, experience vibrant culture and architecture and history and joy while eating really good food, and maybe it'll teach you something new like it taught us. Thank you.